something's broken. Not bent, not stressed, broken. There's a rule in markets that's older than any of us. When prices split between two locations, smart money floods in and closes the gap. Buy where it's cheap, sell where it's expensive. Pocket the difference. It's called arbitrage, and it's supposed to be automatic. Like gravity, you don't have to believe in it for it to work. Except right now, with silver, it's not working. Reports coming out of Tokyo this week show physical silver changing hands for the equivalent of $130 an ounce. That's not a typo. Meanwhile, the Comex in New York is quoting $76. Same metal, same planet, different universe. That's a 70% gap, and it's been sitting there for days, not hours, days. If the system was functioning, that gap would have closed by now. Traders would be lining up to exploit it, but they're not, because they can't. The bridge is out. What you're watching isn't a premium spike. It's not a busy week at the dealers. What you're watching is the moment the machine stops working. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's what I want you to understand. This isn't about predicting where silver goes next month. This is about recognizing that the pricing system we've relied on for 50 years just failed its stress test. The Comex, the London Fix, the whole apparatus that's supposed to tell us what silver is worth, it's producing a number that has nothing to do with what you'll actually pay to get the metal in your hand. That's not a market anymore. That's a fiction. Let me walk you through what's unraveling, because there are three pillars that used to hold this system together. All three are cracking at the same time. First pillar, the arbitrage mechanism. This is the safety valve. When prices get out of line, arbitrage snaps them back. It's economics 101, but here's the thing about arbitrage. It only works if you can move the product. If I can buy silver in New York for $76 and sell it in Tokyo for $130, I'm printing money. Unless I can't get the silver out of New York, or I can't get it into Tokyo, or the cost of moving it, insuring it, and waiting for it eats my entire margin. Right now, all three of those problems exist. The registered silver, sitting in Comex vaults. The stuff that's actually available for delivery. It's down 70% from where it was just a few years ago. You heard that right? 70%. The pool of metal that's supposed to be freely tradable has been drained to the point where taking large quantities out triggers red flags. Add to that the logistics nightmare of moving precious metals across borders in a world where every government is suddenly paranoid about strategic resources. And you got friction that kills the trade. But here's the real kicker. Even if you could pull it off, even if you moved the metal from New York to Tokyo and collected your $50 spread, you'd only do it once, because the moment you pull metal out of Comex, you're not replacing it. There's nothing coming in to refill the tank. Which brings us to the second pillar. Supply flexibility. For decades, when demand spiked, supply adjusted. Refiners ramped up, recyclers melted down old jewelry, miners increased output, the market found equilibrium, that system just died. On January 1st, China implemented export licensing for silver. Now only 44 companies are authorized to ship refined silver out of the country. And these aren't just any companies. They have to prove they produce massive volumes. Small refiners, secondary processors, scrap recyclers, they're all locked out. China refines more silver than anyone else on the planet. And as of last week, that spigot got turned down to a trickle. You might be thinking, so what? There's other sources. Sure, except China wasn't just exporting their own mined silver. They were importing ore, refining it, and shipping finished bars to the rest of the world. That entire flow just stopped. The refineries in Shanghai that used to process metal for European and American buyers, they're now forbidden from exporting unless Beijing gives explicit permission, and Beijing isn't giving permission. They're hoarding. Why? Because they need it. Solar panels, electric vehicles, advanced electronics. China's industrial machine runs on silver, and they've done the math. They know there's not enough to go around, so they're keeping theirs. This isn't a temporary supply shock. This is a permanent rewiring of the global flow. The West used to depend on Asia to balance the market. That dependency just became a vulnerability. Now here's where it gets ugly. The third pillar, price discovery. For 50 years, the price of silver has been set on the Comex. Traders buy and sell contracts. The contracts represent silver, but most of them never turn into actual metal. they settle in cash. It's a paper market, and it worked fine as long as everybody believed the paper was backed by something real. That belief is evaporating. Back in October, silver lease rates spiked to 39%. Let me put that in context. Lease rates are what you pay to borrow physical silver for short-term delivery. Normally, they're under 1%. Last fall, they hit 39. That's not a market pricing in a little tightness. That's a market screaming that there's no metal to borrow. When lease rates go vertical like that, it means somebody somewhere desperately needed physical silver and couldn't find it. They had to pay insane rates just to get temporary access. And if that's happening in wholesale markets, what do you think is happening at the retail level? This is why Tokyo is at $130. This is why dealers in the US are charging $7 to $8 over spot for generic bars. These aren't opportunistic markups. These are survival prices. When you don't know if you can restock your inventory, you charge what you need to stay in business. The Comex price of $76. That's the price of a contract, the price of a promise. But if you want the actual metal, you're paying the Tokyo price, or something close to it, which means the Comex isn't discovering the price anymore. It's discovering the price of its own irrelevance. Now I know what some of you are thinking. If the banks are short silver on the Comex and the price is rising, doesn't that mean they're getting destroyed? Shouldn't they be bankrupt by now? Not quite. Yes, there are massive short positions. Yes, those positions are underwater. But let's be clear about something. These aren't retail traders gambling their rent money. These are institutions with balance sheets that can absorb billions in losses without blinking. They've got Tier 1 capital. They've got liquidity lines. They've got the Federal Reserve on speed dial. The problem for them isn't solvency, it's delivery. You can survive a price squeeze if you've got deep pockets. You post more margin, you cover your position. You take the loss, you move on. But you can't survive a delivery squeeze if you don't have the metal. And that's the trap they're in. When someone stands for delivery on a Comex contract, when they say, I don't want cash, I want the silver, the exchange has to produce it. If they can't, the contract defaults. And if the contract defaults, the entire pricing system collapses, because at that point, every contract holder realizes they're not holding silver. They're holding a claim on silver that might not exist. That's the nightmare scenario. And we're not there yet, but we're close enough that people are starting to hedge. This is why you're seeing the bifurcation. In the West, where the contracts trade, the price is still tied to the paper system. In the East, where people want physical metal, the price is already broken free. The paper price and the physical price used to move together. Now they're moving apart, and the gap is widening. So what happens next? There are two ways this resolves. Either the Comex price rises to meet the physical price, or the Comex becomes irrelevant. If the price rises, it's not going to be a smooth climb. It's going to be violent, because the moment the shorts realize they can't defend the $76 level, they're going to cover all at once. And when they try to cover, there's no one on the other side willing to sell. That's when you get a gap. A $10 move in an hour. A $20 move overnight. It won't feel like a bull market. It'll feel like a panic. But here's the other possibility. The Comex doesn't raise the price. They change the rules. It's happened before. 1980, when the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market. The exchange didn't let the squeeze play out. They changed the margin requirements. They restricted trading to liquidation only. They forced the market to collapse, and they'll do it again if they have to. If the Comex faces a choice between letting the price run to $100 and shutting down delivery, they'll shut down delivery. They'll declare force majeure. They'll settle contracts in cash. They'll say, we're sorry. Here's $76. Go away. And if you're holding a paper contract when that happens, you just got paid in the currency you were trying to escape. This is why physical metal matters. This is why the guys who've been stacking bars in their safes for the last 5 years aren't sweating. Because when the system rewrites the rules, when the exchange says we're not delivering anymore, the guy with the metal in his hand doesn't care. He's already got it. But if you're holding an ETF, if you're holding an unallocated account, if you're holding a futures contract, you're holding a promise. And promises get broken when the pressure's on. Now, let's talk about what you do with this information. First, stop checking the spot price like it's the gospel. The spot price is a lagging indicator of a system that's already breaking. The real price is what you pay right now to walk out of a dealer with 100 ounces. That's your benchmark. If that number is 76, great. But if it's 85 or 90 or 100, that's the actual cost of entry. The Comex number is just noise. Second, understand that premiums aren't going back to normal, not anytime soon. When supply is tight, premiums rise. When supply is structurally short, premiums stay high. What you're seeing in Tokyo, in the Middle East, in Korea, that's not a temporary spike. That's the new baseline. The era of grabbing silver for $2 over spot is over. Third, and this is the most important point, do not use leverage in this environment. I don't care how bullish you are. I don't care if you think silver's going to 150. If you're trading futures, if you're buying call options, if you're using margin, you are playing in a casino where the house can change the rules mid-game. They can hike margin requirements. They can halt trading. They can force liquidation. And when that happens, it doesn't matter if you were right about the direction, you're still broke. The only way to play this is with physical metal, coins, bars, stuff you can hold, stuff that doesn't have counterparty risk. Because when the paper market implodes, and it will, the only thing that's going to matter is who's holding the actual asset. Now, here's what I'm watching. I'm watching the Comex registered inventory. If that number keeps dropping, if it falls below some critical threshold, that's your signal that the endgame is close. I'm watching lease rates. If they spike again like they did in October, that's confirmation that the physical shortage is getting worse. And I'm watching China. If they tighten the export rules even further, if they start restricting not just refined silver but also scrap and secondary supply, that cuts off the last safety valve. Any one of those triggers could set off the repricing event. All three together. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Here's the reality. The silver market is a machine that was built in a different era. It was designed for a world where supply was abundant, where arbitrage worked, where prices were set in New York and London and everybody else followed along. That world doesn't exist anymore. What's replacing it is a fragmented market where prices depend on who you are and where you're buying. If you're in Asia, you're paying triple digits. If you're in the West, you're paying whatever the dealer can get away with. And if you're trading paper, you're paying the price of a system that's pretending everything's fine. But everything's not fine. The unraveling is happening in real time. The arbitrage mechanism is broken. Supply flexibility is gone. Price discovery is a joke. The three things that used to hold this market together are failing simultaneously, and when all three fail completely, when the last bit of trust in the paper system evaporates, the price is going to reset. Not gradually, all at once. You don't have to believe me. You just have to pay attention. Watch what's happening in Tokyo. Watch what's happening in the vaults. Watch what's happening with the lease rates. The market is telling you everything you need to know. It's screaming that something's wrong. The question is, are you listening? If this is making sense, if you're seeing what I'm seeing, do me a favor, hit subscribe, drop a comment. Tell me what you're seeing in your local market. What are dealers charging? How long are wait times? What's the vibe on the ground? Because this isn't just about charts and data. It's about what's actually happening in the real world. And the more of us comparing notes, the clearer the picture gets. We're watching history. The collapse of a 50-year pricing system. The end of the paper era. The moment when the world stops trusting the ticker and starts trusting the metal. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for confirmation. The confirmation is already here. It's called $130 in Tokyo while New York prints 76. That's not a market. That's a warning.